I am so excited to bring this young man back. Dr. Mike was a surprise hit on the channel 6 or 7 months ago. I saw him do a breakdown of Dana White's remarkable transformation, all this biohacking stuff. And I just wanted to reach out to him and say, have people figured out how to get in shape easy and quick and fast? And then maybe there's an easy, quick, and fast way to get wealthy too. Dr. Mike, how you doing?
It's awesome to be back on the podcast. I'm doing really well, and I can't wait to talk about this stuff.
Well, the first thing I do want to say is I think Chris Williamson gave you the kindest and frankly a something I wish people would say about me, and that is what it is about Dr. Mike is he's the same on the podcast as in real life. He is
Uh-oh.
just who he is
My
through and
PR
through.
manager is like, ugh, I told you to fake it. I couldn't do it.
Oh, I think I really do. I honestly believe that's the nicest compliment anyone could give someone is you're just the same person either way. I think that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, well, thank you so much to Chris Williamson on that one. I've received a few really awesome compliments for him that were very heartfelt and meaningful to me. I must say, like, to me, it doesn't feel to me like a compliment. Not that it's a bad thing, it's great. But like when I'm just kind of always me no matter what. And so I don't have to try at it. So when someone's like, whoa, you're always you, I'm like, yes, my name's also Mike, but I didn't earn that one. So it's like cool that people like, suppose like a constant personality, but I can't take
Right.
any credit for it really. It's not like a learned skill or something. Yeah.
Well, I think it's I actually think that's even better because I think most people do put on a face or a facade or a caricature when they're out in public, and they're very different. And maybe if you are just the same person, you just don't see it. But I thought it was a great compliment. So
I
there you go.
agree. It's awesome to receive a compliment like that. And, the way I said it, it's like, well, how dare he? You know, I'm gonna take that back.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Well, Dr. Mike, again, thank you for being here. We had a lot of great feedback, a lot of crossover fans. Obviously, my channel very much investing, do the work. There is
Yes.
no shortcuts. It's kind of your thing on the getting in shape side. So I just want to
Yes.
go for it. You did a full breakdown, which I thought was hilarious and detailed, of Dana White's new regimen, this biohacking, and he is in great shape. He looks much
Amazing
better.
shape.
Yeah, and he's over 50, right? Do I have that right?
I believe so. I didn't keep track of his age, but
Yeah, he's not 24. He's not plastic.
no, no, exactly. What did Chris Williamson say? Sam Sulek was made of rubber and magic.
Rubber.
So,
That's what it
yeah.
is. Rubber. Yeah. He's had a few decades on him. So it's
Yes.
certainly, as someone myself who's over 50, the body does not react the same
No.
as it did in the 20s. So I'm curious, when you really break down what really worked for Dana White and what was kind of the core things that you said probably brought, I don't know, 80 or 90%
Yeah.
of the change versus all this other gizmo stuff.
Yeah, there's a bigger point I can make if you're interested in about the nature of hacks and shortcuts that I think
Please.
maybe is that okay if we start there? Because I
Yeah, go
have
for it.
something on the tip of my tongue I'd really like to, I think your viewers might appreciate it. So, in as far as I can understand the investing world, and I don't know the investing world very well, but I'll make a guess here. In almost every single intellectual space in which we're trying to alter our external reality to our benefit, there is much less of a chance that there are hacks or shortcuts, but there are a predictable set of best practices. And the best practices are anywhere from really quick, super simple tips that make tons of sense. For example, in investing, like just buy long and hold and go. Like it's not complicated, but it pays huge dividends down the line. Whereas you can also have best practices that are insanely complex and insanely demanding, but also yield insanely great results. They're just going to take a lot of input. Like, for example, our company is actually in part our name for the company, Renaissance Periodization, is an ode to these folks. But John Simons and his Renaissance Technologies trading fund, I mean, quantitative funds, hedge funds, and other kind of quant funds, they're doing massive parallel algorithmic computer architecture, running tons of systems, tons of AI, and they get crazy returns and a huge amount of risk reduction. But they got computer scientists working 24 hours on that stuff. It's not exactly what I would call a hack. It's not a shortcut at all. It's a
Yeah.
long cut, right? So that best practices space can be filled with simple things and complex things that require a little bit of time or a lot of time. That is kind of like one of these almost if you have like, you know, imagine like a spacecraft rocketing down towards the Earth. It's got the heat shield and there's the stuff around it. It's kind of making an indent in the atmosphere. That leading edge is full of those great best practices, some of them tough, some of them easy, but they all work. Tangents, shortcuts, and hacks are trying to escape that leading edge somehow and teleport you a couple miles down into the atmosphere. That was just generally really, really unlikely. So as advancement occurs in any field, the power of best practices starts to become really, really impressive. For example, I love that I'm on your show. I can talk about these things and it'll make some sort of sense of relevance. I think it's very highly likely that AI powered robo investing for ETFs is going to start to become so unbelievably powerful that you just give your money to the GPTs and they'll get you 12% year on year, 13, then 16, then 19, then 20. And then we live in a futuristic 2030s that looks completely ridiculous. It doesn't mean they're hacking anything. That just means they got really good at doing the thing they're supposed to do. And so just like that in fitness, if you really know your stuff, you can have really, really, really good results. It looked like a hack, but there's no hack. It's just we know a lot of stuff and then you work really hard at it. And you don't even have to work as hard as you could possibly have worked. You can be economical and only work several hours a week on your fitness. But because you're on that leading edge doing the right stuff, then you get really big benefits. So I would love for a discussion in mainstream fitness to shift away from how to hack it. Be like, okay, given what the market is now and the robo investors aren't that good, how can I make $1 million tomorrow? Shut up. Don't ask that question.
Wrong
Ask
question.
the question
Yep.
of how do I put in the work in the most efficient way possible to minimize risk and maximize return? That's a really good question. And so parlaying that to your original question of all the things that Dana White did, what was it that did the heavy lifting for his physique? And concomitantly, what did he do that, how to phrase this well, that didn't really do much relative to the investment of time, cost, expectation, alternative opportunity, such that you could look at everything he did because the results are amazing and go, okay, this stuff is the stuff I'm going to try. This stuff is the stuff that maybe if I'm like find myself with too much money and too much time, I could try, but it's really just not worth it. So to that end, the biggest factors by far, and I would put my entire reputation on this, in Dana White's transformation are 2 or 3-fold. One, he started doing resistance training. He lifted with weights for a consistent and hard effort. Consistent and hard. Luckily, he has a good coach. Mila Sarchev coached some of the best Olympians of all time. So he's got a great coach that shows him how to do the movements right, that makes him progress. That's great. But all of us can get really, really good training. It's just consistency and effort. I suspect, though I don't know this for sure, it just doesn't look, I'll put this very charitably, but all in due spirit of kindness. It just doesn't look like prior to a few years ago, Dana lifted regularly. Like his physique just doesn't look like that. Because if you're like having a good time being ultra rich and successful like him, you tend to go out for drinks a lot, you got big dinners a lot, you get a little bit extra body fat. But if you lift that entire time, you kind of look like one of these like New Jersey Italian guys. It's he's got a little gut, but like damn, like he's got some shoulders and some chest and something's happening.
Right.
Dana didn't have that. And so I suspect he ramped up his training intensity and consistency just substantially in the last few years. That builds muscle, which alters your health and physique by a huge factor. That's number one. Number two is he obviously constrained his caloric intake and ate healthier, higher protein foods more often, such that the result is he's lost something like 40 pounds or 37 pounds or something of tissue since he began this kind of journey a year or two ago. When you lose, and here's the real big kicker, when you lose that much weight, plus at the same time you gain 5 to 10 pounds of muscle, the net transformative result is a visual appearance and health effect that mirrors 50 pounds of fat loss. Because if you think about it, let's say you lose 40 pounds of weight, but during that time you gain 10 pounds of muscle. Well, you lost 50 pounds of body fat. And because you gained 10 pounds of muscle, you gained a ton of metabolic health benefits and, of course, aesthetics. So Dana doesn't just look like a skinnier version of Dana. He looks like a jacked and ripped version of Dana. And the
Yeah.
two biggest things responsible for that by far is the fact that he's lifting seriously, consistently, and whatever method he used, reduced his calories while keeping his protein high for weeks and weeks and months and months. That is probably 80 to 90% of the effect that he got. And everything else is by definition smaller details.
Yeah, when I saw Dana White's transformation, your full breakdown, which I thought was amazing, my takeaway as not a billionaire, right? Not
Right.
somebody who's got his money. I looked at that and said he hired a world-class trainer.
Yep.
He clearly changed his diet. I would argue there was two more things that I caught, but I could be absolutely wrong.
Okay.
That's why I want to talk to you. One is he took his sleep seriously, so he was also sleeping more or sleeping better. And maybe some of that was because his health got better, so he slept better. And then I thought I heard this, but I could be wrong. He also started taking TRT or something like
Mhm.
that older men, older males
Yes.
often start taking. I mean,
Yes.
those are pretty significant
Yes.
helpers as well, I would think. And he's
Um,
54. I just checked. According to
yes.
Google, he's
54.
54.
That's really impressive. So, Mark Bell shared one of the clips of my video, and Dana White got in the comments.
Oh,
And
cool.
understandably, it was not a charitable clip to him, and he
Ah,
clapped back and was a little bit upset, which is, again, is super understandable. He doesn't know who I am, and I look like some idiot buffoon making fun of an insanely successful man without knowing anything directly about him, so it's extra doubly stupid. But he clapped back a little bit, and one of the things he said in that exchange, it wasn't with me, it was with other people. I just
sure.
stayed right the fuck out of it. Sometimes you just, when you have nothing to say
That's
that, I
yeah.
wanted to get in there and be like, hey, Dana, it's me, you're the man, but sorry. So
Yeah,
maybe
my
that'll
bad.
be another time when I make that introduction, so he can backslap me into being poor again. But he did clarify that he had been on TRT for a long time,
Oh, so
not the last
pre.
week, pre working with Gary Brecka, from what I understand.
Okay, so so as a man who's now almost 52, I'll be 52 in a week or so. I just want to talk about, if I can,
Yeah,
selfishly, is that something I should look into? Because again, I'm somebody who's used to be very athletic, used to get the transformation. It doesn't work the same way. The body doesn't react the same
sure,
way. Shit aches a lot more than it used to.
sure.
Is that something that, hey, you should go check out, or is it just not worth the risks, or what? I'm not
Yeah,
trying to be a bodybuilder. I
right.
just, general health and well-being.
Yeah. So what I would do is, it's definitely totally cool to check out. You don't have to check it out, but you can check it out, and I can tell you exactly how to check it out. You're going to do two things. It's really
Hmm.
straightforward. And anyone who's listening can also check it out. If you're over the age of 40, it's worth a concern. It's worth a think.
Okay.
The one that you're going to do is you're going to go online, or you ask ChatGPT, or you take an online quiz. You can just ask ChatGPT, and it'll do this really well for you. You go, hey, ChatGPT, can you ask me 5 to 10 questions based on my perception of things and how I'm feeling, as far as my mood, etc., and sex drive, blah, blah, blah. Just give me like the standard questionnaire for, do I have any symptoms of low testosterone? And that's critical
Okay.
to put that last part in, because if you have, for example, here's some of the things that it might ask you. If your sex drive is really good, if your day-to-day mood is really good, you have energy, vitality for life, if you are getting some decent results in the gym and your body works, like, it's not just you're unable to make gains, like you take your training a little seriously, you dial in your diet, the veins start coming out, things are good. Because remember, it's all adjusted to being 50 or 52, right? So
Right.
for that reference, how are you doing? And if you honestly look at those questions and fill it out, like, I don't have any symptoms of low testosterone. If you
Okay.
have very low sex drive, you struggle a little bit with more depressive episodes than you would like. Kind of the zest for life is a little bit gone. You're weak in the gym. Your joints feel creaky. You just no motivation, etc. Well, you're starting to check some boxes for low testosterone. But
Okay.
if you aren't checking any boxes, step two, and step two is going to the doctor to get your testosterone levels checked, is almost like, why would you? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's like if you walk around a house you just acquired and everything structurally looks really, really sound and everything's great and even the furniture's great, like, you don't have to go get an estimate on how to refurbish the house. Like, it's just
Yeah.
one thing then the other.
Makes sense.
Seems like nothing wrong. Everything's good. Now, part two would be to go to the doctor and get the levels checked. And your levels typically are in nanograms per deciliter, somewhere between 300 and 900. And if they're below 300, which means they're low, if you don't have any of the symptoms, it's a conversation with your doctor, because if you get on testosterone replacement, you're going to take your levels up to that middle range, even the higher end, usually closer to 600 to 900. And you might get a big benefit out of it. But the big benefit will be like, well, I feel normal, My testosterone is nominally low. Do I really want to inject drugs into myself every week and explain TSA or customs when I go to Europe what the hell these needles are? It's all legal. You got a prescription. No one's going to put you in jail. It's just a thing, right? It's just
Sure.
another thing. And so there's that. If your testosterone levels are low, below 300 or in that range, and you have more symptoms than not of low testosterone, it's more of a conversation with your doctor about like maybe pulling the plug on this is a really good idea, or hitting the button to start. And you're much more likely, not guaranteed, much more likely to have a really positive experience of the thing. However, if your testosterone levels are on the high end, medium to high end anyway, and you honestly, for the love of God, just cannot say that you're experiencing any of these symptoms, it's probably more harm than good, and mostly not harm in the sense of like you're gonna like have bad health or cardiovascular outcomes. You work with your doctor, they get your testosterone level to high normal range, generally just affects every system really well. But you have to pay money for the thing that your balls make anyway, and you
Yeah.
you drag your balls around everywhere you're going anyway. But now like you're going to Australia for a 3-week conference, and you got to bring like the needles and vials, and you got to pull the whole thing is just like way overrated. And so basically, TLDR, there needs to be an as experienced and as
Mm.
measured argument for doing it. And if there is, great, give it a shot. If there's not, don't you dare think that TRT is going to be like the thing that like makes everything wonderful. It's
Love it.
it's like yeah, it's kind of unfortunate when people expect something to be more than it can be. Like someone has like a dilapidated marriage, terrible finances, and they're like, "We're going to move to Wisconsin. I think that's the best thing for my family."
Yeah.
Like, what is in
That'll fix
Wisconsin
it.
is going to save your marriage and your finances? Like, what's different? And the kids will have more time to play in the trees. You're like, are you sure this is what's really going to do it? It's a long ways to move. So kind of similar idea.
I love that. I love how the way you tell stories and your imagery is just so well done. One of the things I know I wanted
My
to talk to you
psychiatrist
about.
said the same thing. I'm
That's
kidding.
right. Yeah. What are your ink blots? What are your ink blots? Yeah. That's very, very,
Terrible.
very, just terrible. One of the things that I knew I wanted to talk to you about today that I've heard is true. I've never validated, but I'm going to say it's true. Having visible abs, right? The number of human beings who have visible abs is less than the number of millionaires in the world. And I just think that's an odd thing. I
Is
don't know.
that
I don't
true?
know. I think that is true. I've heard that a number of times. And again, it's visible abs because again, like you said many times, all of us have them. They're just
Yes.
hidden behind a layer of goop. Um,
Yes.
I wonder why that is. Is it just because we don't control the diet? We don't. Is it work out? Is it kind of back to Dana White's thing? We just enjoy life and we don't take it serious. Any thoughts?
Tons of thoughts, as always. I almost always have thoughts on stuff. I just don't know if they'll be cogent or useful, but here they go. um, I'm like a GPT that someone tuned wrong and it spits out some good stuff, but mostly just dumb shit. Yeah. So I think there's a couple vectors for this. Some people just, maybe most people just don't care enough.
Hmm,
Like if they get that 1950s rich guy in a business suit, there's no gut protruding the suit out at the bottom look for you, but they're good. And like a lot of times, especially guys in our demographic or the mutual demographic we have, a lot of times they're married, or when they're single, they're looking for women. They're not looking for girls anymore to date. And
right.
like, what kind of like, 38-year-old beautiful goddess like executive lady that you date and is gonna be like, I need a six pack, like like what really, like you need someone who's a career oriented caring man with a body that's not grotesque and disgusting. And if you talk to women, and this has been done in inordinate amounts, tons of data on this of what women actually prefer, chiseled six pack is somewhere real far down the list above
Yeah.
like you're tall, you can look in a woman's eyes and speak confidently to her, you have a good financial backing, you have a sense of purpose in this world and a career and plans for the future. That stuff, man, that's just way outranks. So a lot of guys don't have a six pack because accurately perceiving that the women they care about just don't care and they don't care. So when no one cares, it's like Michael, like do you have like a rocket car in your front yard? And you were like, I mean, I technically I could afford one. Why though, right?
Yeah.
Why? Just never have one. So that's a big part of it. Another big part of it is, of course, a lot of people do want abs, but mostly all too many of us are eating way too much tasty, high calorie, delicious, highly palatable food that's convenient. And so it's the easiest time in the world to get really fat. And it's also really fun. And it's also really cheap. And it's also really convenient. So it is all those things stacked up. it can be a thing where a lot of people just carry extra body fat because, like, you know, Cheetos taste good and sushi tastes good, and there's like, it doesn't matter what your spending is like, or what where you are on the wealth distribution and consumption fraction of your stuff goes to food. You can find rich guy ways of eating food that makes you fat, and you can find poor guy ways and everything in between. So that's another really really big one. And I also wonder how the statistic is posed, because I think if you take people, um, people who are more likely to be millionaires are older folks, almost
True.
always.
True.
And young, you know, abs are a little easier when you're younger. When you're older, yeah, 50-year-olds, the number of 50-year-olds that have visible abs versus our millionaires, yeah, I would bet it's more millionaires than visible
Oh,
abs.
yeah, it's
For
probably
18
five
year
or
olds,
10 to
it's
one. Yeah.
exactly
Yeah.
for 18-year-olds the other way around. It's tons of abs,
True.
not a lot of
True.
millions.
Yeah, that's
So
fair.
so there's
Fair point.
also that. And then, you know, the kind of the more low-key stuff is that a lot of guys, they have a fitness habit, but they're so unscientific and
Mm,
unregimented about their fitness habit that they're always in that realm of 50s guy body. Like, they look good,
yeah.
they look fine. Like, you go to a health club and you know, like, walk around with your towel, and people look at your body and they go, that's an adult body who's not unhealthy and looks like he's a fit man. Yeah, see, yeah, I'm a
Right.
fit man. See, but it's not like no six pack or anything, because even though the guy puts in a lot of effort, he's not doing it in the ways, and he's dieting in some of the ways that are just trying to get the hacks and not really doing that work to carve out the physique. And that's something we do have a lot of control over. And so, to me, one of the most, not upsetting at a deep level, but kind of like, oh, that sucks, is to see a guy who is putting lots of work, time wise, effort wise, thought wise, into their fitness, but they're making some kind of critical mistakes. And
Mm,
usually it's very basic mistakes, and they're just not getting the results that they want. And that's definitely a thing.
yeah. One of the things I've heard, and I don't know if this is going to just annoy you a lot, but we're going to ask it anyway. I've heard a lot about, again, going back to abs. I've heard most people say that abs are made in the kitchen. How does that kind of hit you? What do you think about that?
Yeah, technically, abs are made in your mother's womb. That's where your abs are assembled.
Good point.
But
Good point.
so it's
Visible
a
abs. Visible abs are made in the kitchen.
yes, exactly. So that kind of little piece of wisdom is supposed to convey something that actually is really true,
Mm,
and it's the fact that your diet is the number one thing that determines how much body fat you have. Physical activity is relatively stable among most people. You can raise it substantially and burn some more calories, but it usually doesn't make these huge impacts. People that are skinny and lean out in the street, mostly it's because they're not eating like total pieces of shit. It's
right.
not mostly because they have like 10,000 calories a day that they spend on effort. You actually see how powerful calories are with tasty foods when you see a lot of construction workers that are pretty overweight, and you're like, how do you beat construction? And they're like, well, so Taco Bell for lunch, and you know,
Exactly.
Taco Bell for breakfast, Taco Bell for dinner. I'm kidding, but you know, like, just if you eat a lot of junk, you can outdo that real quick.
True.
So it's supposed to, that quote is an ode to the fact that if you get your eating in check, which ostensibly happens in the kitchen, it's better if it happens in the kitchen, because if it happens in the fast food ordering line, you're going to get some different results.
Yeah.
That allows you to reduce your body fat so much through your diet that your abs can be made slightly bigger or slightly smaller with hypertrophy training. But look, if you have 2 inches of fat around your abs, it doesn't matter how big your abs are. No one's going to see them. But if you have not so impressive abs, but you have very little thin skin over them, you're going to have a six pack all the time. And the amount of body fat you carry under your skin is mostly affected, other than endemic variables like your age or testosterone status, your training history, is mostly affected by your diet. And people will go into the gym and go, what workouts do I do for abs? And they're understanding physiology wrong. They think like you can train your abs and the abs just burn the body fat right off of the skin above. But it turns out that that effect does exist. It's just like 1 or 2% of all of the variance, and 98% of the variance is when your muscles train in any part of your body. They call for fat by signaling to the blood, and fat all around the body deposits into the blood. So you get a total body shrinking or expansion of fat. And again, that's mostly something that happens in the kitchen. So if you want exercises to get great abs, unless you're lean enough in the kitchen to see abs, it just does not matter at all. And that's a big deal.
Yeah. One of the other things I know is true in the finance and getting rich, millionaire space. I'm going to guess it's true in fitness, but that's why I'm going to ask you is you can probably look at somebody's five closest friends and you can guess what shape they're going to be in also. Like, doesn't your friend circle make it, it's hard to get away from that? Yes.
It can be really hard for very mature adults that have a lot of experience and knowledge and not tenacity, but focus on their priorities. They can have friends that are over fat or under muscled or totally don't even lift weights. And it's totally great because the guy of the focus of our conversation here, this hypothetical man, he goes to the gym, he attends to his proper eating, he does what it takes. Like my friend, like a lot of my friends don't, they like lift weights for health. Some even don't. And they're just friends I've had for a long time. They're amazing people, and they're all, professionally successful and very, very smart people that I love. But they don't have to all be fitness addicts. Like, actually, I don't have that many friends that are like super in the industry or whatever. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it's like as soon as you make money, that doesn't mean you have to like cancel your friendships with your not rich friends. You're like, sorry guys, I'm going to hang out with millionaires on a yacht now. I don't like any of them. I don't know any of them, but sorry, I'm too rich to hang out with you poors. It's the smell, really. I can't be photographed with you guys anymore because I'm rich and famous now. So, boy, can it be easier or harder if you have some kind of people around you versus not. It's just the same way as it works in investing and wealth building. If the people around you understand, are accommodating to at least, or supportive of, or also in the fitness lifestyle themselves, gee whiz, it's a different conversation. Let's combine the two into rich guy space and fitness space. Two rich guy ideas. Both involve meeting your rich guy friends on a rented yacht in Miami, going around the Miami metro area on the yacht for a little while, a few days, right? What's going on the yacht? If it's like Tony Soprano looking rich people, I mean, it's going to be tasty, right? The private chef, all the best food. But if you're a fitness minded person, you're going to be like, what macros are in this cheese and cream? What is this? Like, fit people can't eat this all the time. But one of the things, and I'm sure you've been around enough social events to know this, like non-lifter, non-fitness people, they eat the darndest things all the time. I get an amazing dinner, fuck macros, who cares? But like breakfast and lunch and dinner and snack that all suck. It's like, God, this is real difficult. But the other thing is you could be on the same idea, same rented yacht, different friends, rich guy friends that are fit and live the fitness lifestyle. What are they going to have for breakfast? They might have some protein shake options, lean cuts of meat, a chef making egg whites. They could have some really awesome protein bars and little containers all around the boat if you're hungry. Protein shakes here and there, fresh fruit and lean meats and milk can be made available to you. Lunch is some healthy stuff. Dinner's a really good, healthy, high protein, but also some wine and some truffle fries. Hey, you got to live a little, right? You're on the yacht, but not every single meal is totally awful. That's a big deal. And it's not just the availability and the ease of the thing, but also when you're around people that lift, you tend to lift harder. You tend to stay more consistent. The yacht might be a 3-day thing you pull into harbor. If you're with regular people, they're like, all right, let's go and explore, San Juan, Puerto Rico for 4 hours. Whereas your other friends might be like, I know a great gym in San Juan. We're going to Uber over there. We're going to lift, and then we're going to explore. It changes the dynamic of the vacation. Another thing is they might be like, well, we could go to San Juan because there's this amazing kind of brunch club and you overlook the ocean and it's awesome. We could do that. But also we could do that like a little bit later in the day, but earlier we can walk around San Juan and we can see a bunch of stuff. Hey, that's 15,000 daily steps. It's tough to get fat after that. That concordance of activity is a big deal. And one last thing to mention on that is a little bit less of a concern for adults, very big concern for young people, is kind of social norms, acceptance, and understanding. This is especially a thing with family more than with friends.
Sure.
You know how it is. Some of your family members understand the fitness and health thing, and some of them just have no time for it, especially older folks who come from a completely different understanding of how the world works. And, they'll be like, really, you're eating a protein bar? We have chefs making this food. And you're like, I know, but they're making God knows what. I got to take care of myself. Even if your fitness friends are currently on their, day off and they're eating like total crap, they understand and support that you're trying to look at some macros. Whereas other people are like, can actively not make fun of you. Nobody's 52 years old to be making fun of you in any way that you care about. But they could be like, really? Like, are you sure you don't want some XYZ? And that can be a little bit annoying. So having some folks around you in life that are on that fitness journey could at least understand the fitness journey. That's a big deal. That's a huge plus.
Yeah, the thing that is most important to me, because I think you're right, when you're over 50 and you're on a journey, you've already got that grit or discipline or whatever. You could just tell your friends to F off if you're
Totally.
doing your thing.
Oh, yeah.
But there's a lot of people that struggle just to get started. They
Yes.
watch one of your videos, they see what you're doing, they want to get healthy, they want to get bigger, right? They want to get a body like yours, but it's not like their circle of friends today. So they get a membership. They join RP. They start doing it, and then their friends make fun of them. It's like, you're not going to the after party. You're not seeing me Sunday morning for brunch. When you're at the
Yes.
very beginning and you're trying to change, you're trying to make a good move. Dude, I call it firing your friends. You just need to
Yeah.
fire them. You need some new ones, man. Let's if let either fire them or just know you're going back, because it's tough.
100%. And at the very least, you friends are getting outright counter supportive, interfering with your adoption of fitness. You might
Yes.
need to have a little talk with a few of them and be like, fellas, look, like I used to have this thing where I had and still have some core group of kind of college friends that are my best friends for life. And especially when we were a bit younger in our 20s, we had like this hangout group and we would meet because we lived across the country. We would meet once or twice a year and just have the time of our lives for several days, living in a house together and partying and all this other stuff. And early in that relationship, the conversation was like, okay, Israel, like, oh, you got to lift today. We were going to go to the park. How long is your lift? Can you make it 45 minutes? Does it have to be an hour and a half? That conversation changed once because I talked to my friends at least a few times, and also because they started to really deeply understand what's going on themselves. And also, a little bit, they also adopted, at least on the margins, a fitness lifestyle. It ended up being the relationship became different such that when we were still hanging out, still same hangout, still same party time, still same, 3 to 5 days together, wonderful, beautiful stuff, some of my fondest memories ever. But instead of being like, Israel, how long is it going to take you to lift today? Can you not lift today? The conversation was like, oh, Israel, you need 2 hours, right? And what time of the day is that going to happen? So we can structure the activities in such a way that
Mm,
we do the activities you don't like. And then by the time you're done from the gym and shower, we do all the stuff that we like to do together. It was so much better once that happened because at the very least they were like, look, we know this is a part of you. You're going to do the fitness thing. Let's find a way to work that in to our friend circle versus just always treating it as like this nuisance. And unfortunately, some people, members of your family, especially, 'cause family is the darndest. Family will say the darndest shit to you. The friends never will.
mm,
Sometimes they really do push back consistently, and they're really upset that you're always doing your fitness thing. And that I would recommend sit down, relatively serious conversation about like, guys, this fitness thing isn't going anywhere, and I want to work with you guys. So maybe I wake up early to get my workout out of the way. I drive myself. I come back to the resort, and we're all good to go. But it's not something that's gonna go away, and
right.
that's a big deal.
I love that. I love that. Well, I see you online with your wife all the time. How important is it to have your significant other, in this case, your spouse, kind of doing the same jam in the same, doing the same fight? How important is that?
It's a good question. I have a few thoughts on that, coming from a few different perspectives. Maybe three. One is I'm politically probably closest to libertarian. I just like freedom a whole lot, and the idea that to impose your own values on someone else is just really alien to me. And so like it's kind of weird if you're like, oh, so my wife has to work out if I do. Like that just hits me all wrong. So on
Yeah.
principle, I'm not super into that. The other thing is another perspective in which I see that, especially with husbands and wives, is I'm just really, really averse to like an alpha beta
Mm,
dominance situation. Some people like that. Some women like that the man takes charge and kind of makes all the affairs. They sort of like to be kind of like smitten. I get it. It's it's definitely a fetish. It's definitely some people like to live their lives like that. No judgment. I'm just personally absolutely not for it. So if my wife was like, I'm going to do these hobbies instead of lift, I'd be like, baby, God bless you. I love you till the end of the moon. Like I'm not trying to make you do anything.
right.
And another perspective is, insofar as they don't want to do the thing that you do, they can go 95% of the way to making your mutual relationship awesome by simply understanding and accommodating the thing that you do and being supportive and facilitating of it versus interfering with it. Such a big difference. Like,
Sure.
I don't need you to approve of my lifting and my dieting, but I need you to understand that when we get into a 7-Eleven, I'm looking for high protein stuff. And when we land in Melbourne, I'm going to go look for a gym. And when we, have a day off, I'm going to look to get some steps. Even if you go to, the lounge in the hotel and read a book while I do steps, it doesn't matter because you're cool and I'm cool. That's the biggest deal. So it's not as much about getting your partner and significant other to do the fitness journey with you. It's to at least get them to give you the full nod of like, yep, this is a great thing you're doing and I support it.
Right.
If you have that, you're
Agreed.
golden. Yeah, yeah.
Agreed.
Does it help if they do it at least side by side with you in the gym? Like my wife and I do not have the same training program. Obviously, we're training for a few different things here, slightly different training history, slightly different gender by a small margin. And
all the important margin, though. It's the
that's right.
margin.
That's right. Gender different enough. And
yes, yes.
So we might not even go to gym at the same time, but we both go to the gym. And even if we go at the same time, we're not going to do the same thing. We don't wear like matching outfits and do curls at the same time. She's in there doing something, I'm in there doing something else. But within 1 hour that we're in the gym 3 or 4 or 5 days a week, it's a ritual that we can do together, especially if we travel and stuff like that. At home, I'm in my office most of the time. So is my wife. We train at usually lift at different times. We have a home gym. So we're both getting it done. So it doesn't have to be something you do together. If you can do it together regularly and you get along really well, amazing. I would just tell guys, it's probably better if someone else coaches your wife, not you. You don't want an extra dynamic of telling people what to do around you. And also you should have respect for their autonomy and let them do their thing, be supportive, help them get the hard sets if they like you yelling at them in the gym or getting after it or spotting them, but don't overextend and offer too much and try to take over and always correct them, because the domineering stuff gets really, really old. And so if you can avoid all those pitfalls, I think having someone doing a fitness journey with you is awesome, but almost as good to get someone who isn't even doing the fitness journey, but respects that you're doing it, understands why you're doing it, and can either at least be neutral and potentially be facilitating of your needs. And if that happens, hey, gold stars all around.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. One of the things that I decided to do, because I actually personally thought 2023 was a frankly shitty year. I didn't accomplish anything, right?
Okay.
I just I got through the year. I didn't have anything that I could write down like, hey, you did something cool this year. I guess I took it easy, whatever. I didn't feel good about it.
Okay.
So, early January, I decided that I'm going to do something I've never done before, and that is run a marathon. So the longest I've run is 13.1. I've done it 5 or 6 times. And so I signed up for the Vegas Marathon kind of early November. So it's very different than weight training, obviously. But any thoughts about a 52-year-old taking on a marathon? Any little tidbits or thoughts you have on that crazy idea?
Tons. Take your leg training in the gym and put out maintenance mode. So basically, 6 total sets of quads and hamstrings per week is good enough. Sets of 5 to 10. You might experience a little bit of strength loss, but you'll get all that back when you pare down your running once the race is over. Another thing is make sure you're real consistent with your running training and your marathon training, such that you're training multiple days a week and not like, I've seen a lot of people professionally successful and older like yourself. A lot of times it's half marathon, but sometimes they try a whole marathon too. And because they're so busy, they're like, yeah, I trained like once last week. It's like, this is not how you train for marathon. Like, especially for endurance activities, high frequency is the key. Technically, every day, 6 days a week, 5 or 6 days a week, you should be either on the road or on the elliptical or on the bike, something that at least trains your general systems, even if your joints are a little trashed. But multiple times a week, you should be running. You should always be challenging yourself in that. They don't all have to be crazy hard workouts. I'm sure you have a plan and some undulation in there, but you got to get consistent. That's a really big deal. Young people could just sort of show up and do it. Not a good idea, but if you're 52 and show up and do it, your hip might not show up, and the doctor's like, we need to get rid of that hip and put in a fake one. So you want to do that. Another one is gradually ease into higher volumes and higher intensities. Don't try to conquer the world. The marathon's in November. We're recording this in June. You got some time to really get into higher speeds, get into more intense intervals, and get that top long distance that you do every week up and up and up and up. You should, most training programs for marathon is logically constructed. Have you run somewhere between 15 and 18 miles a few weeks, a week out before the race, full bore. probably a few times. And if you can do that, 26.2 is going to be a possibility. But if you've never run, I've, this is like so many disasters here. I've talked to numerous people who are quote unquote training for a marathon, but they're like, so what's the longest distance you've run so far? And they're like well into training. It's a couple months left. They're like, oh, 8 miles. And I'm like, my friend,
Hmm.
8 miles compared to 26.2 is this other world.
Right.
It's like thinking you're ready for a high altitude like SR-71 spy plane flight when you like flew a kite once. Like it's the atmosphere looks different up there. Things change. So definitely a big recommendation there for getting into the difficulty so that you're used to it, so that when you run your race, it's like a little bit longer than your usual race that you run for every Saturday anyway, but
Right.
it's not a thing. Also, um, one of my co-workers at RP, his name is Alex Harrison. He actually has an app and runs a company called Alacrity Endurance. And their app automatically determines how much salt, carbohydrate, and fluid you should have with you for any length and intensity of run. I highly recommend people check that out training for marathons. Your ability to train hard and benefit from it if you're properly hydrated and refueled is just next level versus if you're not. Your
Right.
quality of your training is going to suffer. And of course, on race day, you're going to want to have that same preparatory amount of fluid, salt water, etc., such that you just get better training the entire time. Again, when you're 22, just have a drink of water and go run. When
Yeah.
you're 52, you're going to have to make some preparations to make it go well. Another thing is this: if you get some aches and pains in your ankles and your knees and your hips, it's totally fine to take some time away from lots of running and switch to something like the elliptical, which is not impact, maybe the rower, maybe some swimming, but it has to challenge you systemically. It has to challenge your cardiovascular system. You got to be gasping for air on that thing. The
Right.
transfer of training from elliptical to marathon running is really, really high, even if you never run, because your system is the number one limiting factor. The local endurance of your muscles is something that takes a few weeks, and they're good to run marathons after that. The systemic ability to have cardiovascular fitness, it takes months and years to develop. So some people will go, okay, I'm training for a marathon. It's 1 month out. My knees and hips really started to act up, so I significantly reduced my training volume. I didn't make it up for it on anything else, and now I'm kind of getting into the marathon, and my knees are feeling a little bit better. But like, it's going to be a tough run because like I've had to reduce my training volume so much. I can't do any run over 6 miles, and how the hell is 26.2 going to happen? But
How are you going to get there? It's
uh,
almost 5 times. Yeah.
right, it's just a little bit curious. And so if you continue to swim really hard or cycle really hard or elliptical really hard while
Okay.
easing up on the running volume, when a month out your knees and hips feel really great again, you start lifting a running volume, you're lifting your volume and your performance is just there. It's never fallen off because your systemic cardiovascular fitness is so high from that cross training. So instead of just abandoning ship and being like, I just got to train way less, if you get some joint connective tissue stuff, switch gears to training a little bit in running, just enough to stay technical while your joints feel better and better every week, and switch to like elliptical, to swimming, etc., so that when you come back, it's just way better and you're fit. It's also super healthy for you to be doing, and that way all the best things happen. And the last thing is make sure, almost certainly a coach or any kind of program rationally would do this for you, but in the last several days leading up to the race, do significantly less.
Right.
Really ease up, get a lot of sleep, hydrate super properly, go out there and have fun, and make sure to get really drunk after the marathon. Fun,
That's what,
fun. Now make sure you have a chaperone for this, but your body is both so dehydrated and so absorptive after a run like that, that if you have like one or two glasses of wine or shots or beers, as soon as you cross the finish line, you will be instantly really drunk. And it's cool to be able to get drunk from two beers. You're not 17 years old anymore. It doesn't work like that usually.
I love. Oh, that. See, I knew there'd be some at the end of this. That's what I'll do. Hey, can you give me a shot of tequila right as I cross the finish line? That'll do it.
You call me
Well,
up, you're like, hey Mike, I took the shots, I feel like shit. I'm like, at the end of the marathon, you're like, oh my god, I thought you said at the beginning.
right.
How many
The
miles do you
gun
have? You're
just
like,
went off.
24. I feel weird.
Yeah, yeah, it's funny. But hey, I'm going to do a marathon in, I don't know, 4 or 5 months. You're a couple weeks out from your first show.
Yeah,
What is that like? Putting in all that work, dialing in, probably a lot. It probably gets really mental. You got to fight the mental demons as you get
yeah.
closer and closer because you're probably dehydrated some and calories are going down. And
Not
is that is
dehydrated yet. That only happens at the very end, last few
okay.
days.
All right.
But the calories are not as high as my body would prefer. The volume of training is a little higher than my body would prefer. And the near total lack of being able to psychologically feel free to rest as much as you want and eat whatever
Mm.
kind of tasty foods you want is a big deal. Like the very idea of restriction is really kind of tough when you diet for long enough. And I've been dieting for something like 18 weeks already, pretty
Oh,
straight.
wow.
And yeah, and so it's a thing. And that's tough. It's counterbalanced by the fact that like every week that you approach on average the show date, your body looks cooler and cooler and cooler, and it
Mhm.
looks more and more like, wow, when I put this on stage, it's going to be like an impactful physique that I'm really going to be able to be proud of, and maybe will
Nice.
get me a cool show placing. And that technically, like now, I'm really excited and full of gusto, and I can't wait to do the competition and everything.
Mm. That's awesome.
But a few weeks back, there's like the dark times for when your physique isn't quite there yet visually, but you're carrying like 80% of the fatigue of prep already. And you're like, dude, why am I even doing this? So I'm past that point now by a few
Well,
weeks. But if you
that's
caught me a
good.
few weeks ago, I'd have been like in dire straits and despair.
When was the first show you ever did? How long ago?
2013.
Oh, wow. So we're over a decade.
Yeah, but I didn't compete for most of that time. I've only
Okay.
done like 7 shows or 5 shows or something like that, not a ton. I'm mostly interested in improving my body rather than
Mm.
putting it on stage to display. But now comes my time to really try to put the kind of cherry on top of my physical development and bodybuilding. And this next few months, I'm going to be competing probably a lot to try to really make sure that I have a physique on stage that I can really, really be proud of. And then probably switch gears in 1 or 2 years, retire from bodybuilding and focus more on just aesthetic physique for my age. And I'm going to lean in a lot to Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, which I have a brown belt in. Hopefully, that'll advance to the next belt rank at some point after, though it's you don't seek belt ranks as much as you seek just to get better. I do train in jiu-jitsu still, but not so much because my bodybuilding is a huge priority for me now. I'll be
Right.
making that switch after. So it's kind of cool for me, kind of a really trippy time in my life where like 25 years of weight training later, I'm finally able to go through this journey and really hopefully put up a physique on stage that's like, wow, okay. Okay, I built something pretty special.
Mm. And again, back to just kind of tying this to wealth journey, it's not a 1 year thing. You've been building this body for 25 years, I think you just said.
25 years. And I always get the same vibes from people that'll ask me, I'll go through the airport, I'll go through the TSA, and I'll be like, how many years have you been working out? That's something that people ask you often if you look pretty
Sure.
jacked. And you know what, man? Not a lot of people are ready to hear 25. Now, that
Yes.
doesn't mean you need 25 years to look like me. I looked already very muscular and very lean by normal people standards about 10 years into lifting. I certainly look way better now, but because I've been lifting for so long, people are like, it's kind of like, oh, damn. Because the next thing you think is like, I have to do 25 years to
Yes,
look
I
like this?
can't do it. I'm out.
And the answer, right. And the answer is if you lift seriously for 1 year and take control of your diet pretty seriously for 1 year, you can transform radically in your physical appearance, in how you feel, in your health, in your blood markers, in your longevity, in your cognitive performance at your work. It's night and day. Give this thing 6 months or a year, this fitness thing a try,
Yeah.
and you'll stop asking questions of how long did it take you. An analogy for wealth is you talk to someone like Shaquille O'Neal,
Hmm.
who, from what I understand, has like 600 plus million in publicly declared assets. And it's cool to ask him, how does it feel to have $600 million after all these years? It's cool. I'm sure that story is really neat. But once you start on your own journey, let's say you're now in the NBA, you have your first big contract, and you're being paid 10 million every year, and you're taking 8 of that and going right to ETFs and real estate. Uh, Once you're in that process, you don't really so much care about what 600 feels like. You're so, wow, I'm getting so many benefits of this right now that
Yeah.
I'm actually just excited for the journey. So, but what is tough? It's going to the basketball camps, the colleges, and getting no money and putting in the hard work. So if you're building a real estate business, if you're building a stock portfolio, if you're building a career for yourself, you're going to have to put in a lot of drudgery for a while until it pays off. The good news is in fitness, the drudgery that visibly pays off in big ways only has to be a few months to maybe a year. And you're going to get so many amazing results if you do it remotely correctly. And we have the RP Hypertrophy app, we have the RP Diet Coach app. They can totally help you. You have a lot of coaches on staff. You can hit us up. We'll get you a great coach and best coaches in the world by many metrics. And you can do this all by yourself. You don't need to buy any of our shit. You can buy all of our shit. But if you do it and if you do it well, the after a few months, it's like getting checks every month for $50,000 from your job
Yeah.
or your funds. You stop asking the questions of, whoa, what's this going to be like in 10 years? Or more like, well, how do we get this to 55 a month and then 60 a month? Or like, fuck it, let's just go to 50 and just live life and enjoy and accrue wealth. So the good
Yeah.
news is it does not require as much to really get rolling as with finance, but it still requires months. And
Yeah.
like, to be completely honest, most people do not think on the horizons of months. They think on hours and days. And if you think
Mm.
on hours and days, I can promise you two things. You're probably not going to be very fit, and you're probably not going to be very wealthy, because some of the wealthiest people in the world, actually almost as a category rule, actually aren't really interested in wealth as their primary mode of motivation. They're interested in building
Mhm.
big things. Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, some of the people that own luxury brands. The people that own luxury brands that are worth $50 billion, I don't think they're like 50 billion. I can't wait for 51. They're like,
Mm.
how do we make this handbag not just the best handbag in the world, but an icon for a generation of
Right.
people who want quality to be what they represent? You ask those kinds of questions, you're going to get a big thing. So ask less of the questions as fitness of like, when can I get abs? When can I lose 15 pounds? When can I lose 20 pounds? How do I get my blood work better? And ask the question of, how do I get my scalpel in there and my little fine-tuned machinery and start slowly building a body that I love? And on the way there, you're going to get so goddamn fit. Just like on the way to building something you really, really like with whatever wealth stream you have, if you're doing something you like and it's really, really profitable, you get the wealth, and you barely even see the wealth coming because you're so focused on the thing.
Yeah, I think there's so much goodness in this. It's focus, daily discipline, doing some of the tried and true principles. I love the fact in health and physical, you can really see a body change in 6 months.
Yes.
Getting wealthy, right? Millions of dollars, owning assets. That takes years, and some would argue a decade to really see life changing wealth. But it's 6 months of commitment, daily discipline, getting the right coaching, the right stuff.
Yes.
You could radically change your body. I think that's
Yeah.
true.
I think in wealth and fitness, it works a little bit in the opposite direction. Wealth is a process that can be mostly seen as an exponential. It starts out real slow and then it gets crazy later.
Agreed.
Fitness is an asymptote. It starts out pretty impressive, and then the results later that you keep getting an improvement, you do, but they're
Ah,
slower and slower. So, like, if you crush the first several years of fitness out, you're gonna look so good, you're gonna be so
mm,
healthy, and you'll look better and be healthier years later, but by a smaller margin. The bad news is you're never going to be Arnold Schwarzenegger probably at that rate.
probably
The
not.
good
No.
news is you're going to be able to have something really, really impressive. So if finance worked like fitness, the better analogy would be like in your first 2 or 3 years of proper financial management, you make like 5 to 10 million, and then it's only like 500,000 a year summarily after. That ain't
Right.
a bad way to live, but with wealth, it's the opposite. Where first
Correct.
you're looking for scraps, and then eventually you just get your stock portfolio dumps an extra million into itself every year, and you're like, I don't even know what the meaning of life is anymore. So that would be great. But with fitness, the good news is more of the benefits are seen up front, but
I love
it's
that.
still on the order of months. And if you're into it for months, you're gonna have a good time. If you're into it for hours and days, and even a few weeks, you're just going to have a bad time.
Yeah. Dr. Mike, where can people find you?
Renaissance Periodization, aka RP Strength, on YouTube. So you just type Dr. Mike or RP on YouTube, fitness, my face will come up, click subscribe. And then anytime you want to access our RP Hypertrophy app, RP Diet Coach app, those are just links in every single video. I would recommend going from there, and hopefully we'll be able to teach you something that's valuable, give you some digital tools that help you, and some fun along the way. I would say if you want to listen to the YouTube channel and watch some videos, just make sure your kids aren't within earshot and everyone's going to
Yeah.
have fun. It's for
Yeah, I would
adults.
definitely. No, it's definitely for adults. I think I just love when you break down Hollywood or this or that. Some are good, some are bad. All of them are funny. You're very
Thank you
good at
so
what you
much.
do.
Thank you so
Dr.
much.
Mike,
You as
thank
well.
you.
Thank you so much for having me on.